focus on understanding the dynamic relationship between the soul and the personality, the lower self, and to methods of discerning the difference between those two aspects of ourself, and how do we transform the lower self so that it becomes an agent in support of the purposeful intention of the higher self. And so esoteric psychology is kind of rooted in that principle, and to
Yeah.
facilitate what is called the process of soul personality fusion, where the
Mm.
soul is trying to infuse itself into the personality, the lower self, recognizing that that lower self, its destiny is to become the servant of the soul, to become the outer garment used by the soul to interface in the world, to, to more effectively make an uplifting contribution.
Today, on Raising the Consciousness of Humanity, I have the honor of welcoming a truly influential voice in the world of spiritual evolution and esoteric philosophy. William Meader is an internationally respected teacher known for helping spiritual seekers deepen their understanding of the soul, the evolution of consciousness, and humanity's spiritual purpose. He is the author of Shine Forth, The Soul's Magical Destiny, as well as his most recent book, which I have here, Supernal Light, a compendium of esoteric thought, and has published numerous articles and teaches throughout the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and beyond. With a background in psychology and a doctorate in esoteric philosophy, William brings deep wisdom, clarity, and grounded insight to the spiritual path. Well, William, I'm super excited that number one, I get to have you on the show and interview you, but also that you're going to be coming down to Florida because I know you have a number of speaking events, which is kind of the primary purpose of us getting together today to help let people know that you're going to be here. You're going to be in Sarasota, you're going to be in Fort Myers, and we'll share the dates and the titles of those events. But what I'd love to hear, just so the audience gets to know you, I know some of them already do, but the ones that don't, tell us a little bit of your background story. Like what called you to do the type of work to lecture all over the world and to be able to share this knowledge? What is the a little bit of that life story so our audience can understand?
Well, great. And thank you, Ron, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so my spiritual journey that led to this kind of work, really, I always mark it in my mind as the time I was about 16 years old, and through a set of circumstances, I learned how to meditate. I learned transcendental meditation at 16 and pretty much have been a meditator ever since, although not necessarily that approach any longer. So I got very interested at that early age. And then in the early 20s, I was also studying things like the Course in Miracles, for example. I did that whole course. And somewhere along the line, I ended up hearing a lecture by somebody in Los Angeles, which is where I lived at the time. And it was a lecture that had a lot to do with understanding the spiritual path from an esoteric point of view. And there were ideas presented there that I thought were so intriguing that I decided to look more closely at it and to learn more about this esoteric philosophy itself. So I started reading a lot about it. And for many years, I was reading a lot of Alice Bailey's work as well as Theosophy, which is sort of the core of where I'm coming from. And after several years of doing that, I ended up deciding that maybe I wanted to see if there's actually formal courses out there where you could study it, not just be home reading it, but study it with groups of people. And I found an organization that really that was their focus. At the time, it was called the University of the Seven Rays. And I dived into it and I did a 5-year program with them. And that program, halfway through it, the teacher of the course, who was the founder of the university, he ended up deciding to do another 5 year course in Copenhagen, Denmark. And he approached me and asked me if I'd be interested to be his co-teacher in Europe, which meant going for 5 years, twice a year, to spend several days with students, and then everything between is correspondence work with students. So I did. So I did this 5 year program twice, once as a student, once as a co-teacher, and there was a 2.5 year overlap. So I got a lot of exposure, both as a teacher and a student in that process. And eventually some other doors started to open where I could more formally be teaching more independently, and a door to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania opened up. And I at that time I had moved to Pittsburgh. Uh, at the time I was married, and my wife was had a sabbatical to, sorry, had an opportunity to study philosophy in Pittsburgh, and also New Zealand opened up in a strange, unexpected way. So so I was teaching for years in three places: Denmark, Pittsburgh, New Zealand, and then it just slowly started to grow.
Hmm.
And now I teach in several countries, many of them you listed, and I'm also unexpectedly I also started offering esoteric astrological readings, which is a division. Esotericism has many, many facets to it. There's an astrological, cosmological, psychological branch to it. There's a creative branch to it. There's a lot having to do with healing and that sort of thing. So I started to learn how to deliver private consultations with people astrologically, of which you are aware of because you were
Yeah,
one of those people. Yeah,
I have my chart right here.
and
Yeah.
he's got his chart right there. Okay, yeah. And so yeah, I pretty much moved away from the work I had been doing. I was a teacher already in the business world.
Hmm.
Long before I did this work, I was a teacher in corporations in Los Angeles doing staff development stuff, management training, conflict
Okay.
resolution. I can't tell you how many Myers-Briggs I presented to people, as well as things like leadership, communication skills. And then I became a psychology instructor at a community college in Northern California for many years. And then the door really started to open for me to teach this philosophy. So that's a quick overview, but at least it gives you a feel for how I came to where I'm at today.
Nice. Well, there must have been something inside of you that maybe kind of like related. The reason why I'm asking kind of that is so when I look at what you teach, one of the things I see is it helps a person understand themselves,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is probably one of the biggest things anybody's journey is if they don't know themselves or they don't know how they fit in, they can feel out of place or they live in a world of comparison or
Mm,
the world of competition. So they're
mm,
comparing themselves to the outer world. But what I see your gift is like it kind of shines a light on this from this esoteric understanding, an ancient understanding of the nature of um, ourselves in a way.
yeah, yeah.
And so did that happen to you? Like when you first saw it, did that kind of shine that light on you as well?
Well, yes. And what happened to me, is I'm glad you asked that, is because when I had heard that first lecture and then started looking into it, there was something about it that I said, I kind of know this.
Yeah.
There's something about this. So it was much more of a process of somehow a deep recognition that
Hmm.
led me on to move into it. And I'm convinced that in previous incarnations, I think I had quite a bit of exposure with it. So there was a feeling of kind of coming home, actually. Yeah. And you're quite right. It has a lot to do, well, there's a whole division of it that's based upon esoteric psychology, which is my favorite branch of all of these areas, that is all about the deeper understanding of the psychological journey toward enlightenment and an
Hmm.
emphasis on understanding the dynamic relationship between the soul and the personality, the lower self, and to methods of discerning the difference between those two aspects of ourself, and how do we transform the lower self so that it becomes an agent in support of the purposeful intention of the higher self. And so esoteric psychology is kind of rooted in that principle, and to
Yeah.
facilitate what is called the process of soul personality fusion, where the
Mm.
soul is trying to infuse itself into the personality, the lower self, recognizing that that lower self, its destiny is to become the servant of the soul, to become the outer garment used by the soul to interface in the world to to more effectively make an uplifting contribution to something beyond oneself. Because the
Right.
soul in all of us is governed by several laws, but one of them is the law of service.
Mm.
See, every soul wants to express itself through the lower self, the personality. It wants to do that without the personality getting in the way.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the challenge. And in so doing, it wants to make an uplifting contribution to something beyond itself, and that's service. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of fascinating processes and understanding that relationship between soul and personality, and to recognize that there are also several types of souls. And these are types of souls that have a different way of looking at the world and are attracted to different um, avenues of human expression for service. We call it the seven soul types.
The seven soul types, is that relative to the seven rays?
Yes. So there
Okay.
are seven types of souls that are governed by seven divine energetic qualities, and each is sacred. Each is a division of divinity in a way, but each will approach service from an entirely different perspective. So there's one, like for instance, a first ray soul is a soul that it's called the ray of will and power, will tend to want to serve humanity through executive opportunities, and will also want to anything that involves leadership or the power to initiate new things.
Okay.
Whereas a second ray soul, for instance, is that's called the ray of love and wisdom. People on that soul line are more inclined to serve humanity through things like educational initiatives, the healing arts, or many of the helping professions. So not only are we trying to understand the dynamics between soul and personality, but we're also trying to understand how is that dynamic different according to the ray of the soul and its relationship to personality. You see? Yeah,
Nice. And now with these seven types that you spoke of,
yeah.
is that going to be covered in one of the lectures that you're giving down here in Florida?
I'm probably a little bit of it'll be touched on in all of them, but a couple of them, particularly the two workshops I'll be doing. One is on soul purpose. I think it's called the Keys,
Yeah.
and the other one's called the Solarized Mind. And those two events will have much more to say about understanding the inner experience from a rayological perspective. So we'll be looking at the seven rays. It isn't a ray workshop where we're trying to assess our own rays. That's a whole different workshop
Okay.
that I do. But it will certainly, if I'm talking about the soul's purpose, which is the workshop I'll be doing in Sarasota, that you that will definitely have a lot to do with understanding the seven types of souls and what they're destined to do in support of humanity's betterment. Um, and as I say, it will also be included in the workshop entitled "The Solarized Mind,"
Yeah.
um, and that because that's another. The solarized mind is a reference to the mind of the soul itself, or something called the causal body, which
Mhm.
is the container deep inside that's holding our soul's consciousness. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. The seven rays are touched on all of the events, and some more than others, as I say.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what I like, William, about your teaching method, basically, because
Mm.
I think we met about a year ago, and that's
Mhm.
probably when you did my my esoteric astrology chart. And
Yeah.
what you shared with me, I felt was it connected with me. It
Mm.
connected with me more so than any other astrological reading have had. So
Mm.
it really was very helpful. And although watching your YouTube videos, and I may have shared this with you before, you explain things that the common person can understand.
Mm. Mm.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, because, and I want people listening to this video to know that when you do come to Florida and you're providing, there's four different workshops you're doing, that honestly, spirituality can be very deep,
Mm,
but the way you present it, you're able to help us understand. And I actually, even in the YouTube videos that I've watched, I see your audience and how you talk with them and engage with them. Pretty much everybody understands the flow of everything that you're covering, which can be sometimes a difficult
mm,
topic to embrace. But
mm.
I guess you explain it really, really well. I A question I have that came up from the seven ray types or soul types.
Yeah.
I like that because obviously here we are in a world that's got a little bit of chaos and confusion, but to understand that, hey, we're all going to be we're called a little differently, I
Mm,
guess.
mm.
My assumption is we all probably fall within, or maybe we have a blend of two types, or are we typically more dominantly one?
Well, okay, so now you're getting into an interesting nuance. So you have a soul ray
Yeah,
that is, think of a ray as being a organizing principle of consciousness. The ray is defining how your perceptions, how you shape interpretations, and how you interact and interface and define interests. And
yeah,
that's the big one is the soul ray, which is the subtlest in us, by the way, deepest and subtlest. But you also have a ray of the personality.
okay,
And that personality ray changes every incarnation, but the soul ray stays the same each incarnation. And that's a simple way of understanding it. There are even further nuances. There's a ray that animates your emotional body, your mental body, even your physical body. But the most important are the soul ray and its relationship to the personality ray. And to understand, I'll give you an example. Let's say that we had a third ray soul. The third ray is called the ray of active intelligence and adaptability.
yeah,
And let's say that we had a fifth ray personality in this incarnation. Well, there's a whole dynamic of understanding how a third ray soul is trying to transform and utilize a fifth ray personality as its agent in the outer world. Whereas in the next incarnation, that same individual will still have a third ray soul, but they may incarnate into a seventh ray personality in that incarnation. And so there's a new dynamic. So when we talk about the study of the rays, it's we're trying to understand how to blend these two together and make them work more effectively in service to the greater whole. Um,
nice.
and by the way, I should mention, just as a side note, is that these rays, as well as the whole philosophy, this whole thing can be expanded to larger systems. Like, for instance, a nation is an entity. The United States is a being. It's an entity, and it has a soul, and it has a personality, and it's struggling to transform the lower on behalf of the higher, just like you and me. And in the case of America, we are a country that has a second-rate soul and a sixth-rate personality, which is different than like the UK, which has a second-rate soul and a first-rate personality. And so there's a whole branch of understanding this philosophy by understanding how it plays out in larger living systems, social systems, national systems, and it even has a bearing on how certain nations have greater affinity with other nations
Hmm.
because of the nature of their ray structure. So it's a big subject, the seven rays, very big subject.
Yeah, I'm interested to learn more because obviously I just came back from India, and I would say totally different than the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
So I didn't realize that it's something like a country itself would actually have uh, a nature of array attributed to them, but
Mm,
that makes sense.
yeah. Well, even you talked about astrology. Astrology is the same way. The whole Earth is viewed as an entity, and it has a ray structure. Every planet is a living force with a higher and lower nature that are ray defined, and even signs of the zodiac.
Yeah,
So you're a Leo, as I
a
recall,
Leo.
and
Yeah, yeah,
with Libra rising, as I recall.
yes.
And so Leo is a sign that the rays that underlie that whole constellation are the first ray of will and power and the fifth ray of knowledge. Um, and so, as an esoteric astrologer, when I am in that mode, I'm looking at a chart and I'm looking at many considerations. But in my mind, I'm also thinking about the rheological influences coming from planets and where they are and the signs that you're born under and etc. So rheology and esoteric astrology are also deeply connected to each other.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think obviously that, like I shared earlier, that fundamentally when we know ourself,
Mm,
then do we have an understanding, we feel we belong, we
yeah,
feel whole.
yeah, yeah.
When we
Well,
understand the other,
yeah,
we have compassion. We basically we naturally, like, what happens is we get conditioned with the one size fits all.
yeah. That's
I've
right.
seen
That's
that
right.
in diets. I've seen that in corporate structures. You talked about being in a corporate
Corporate. Yeah,
teaching at one. So I see it's like everybody just do this or be this way. And when we realize there's these innate differences that are energetically coming through, whether it's the system or the individual or other individuals, it gives us a sense of compassion and understanding because, like you said, some people are going to be called a little differently depending on their nature, depending on their soul's ray, I guess.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, it's interesting, Ron, because the idea of to know yourself, the
hmm.
search for the sense of self, is true for all of us. But there's one sign of the zodiac where that's archetypally core. Leo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Leo is all about that question of who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And that's a working hypothesis, of course.
Yeah.
And yet the sign most associated with establishing understanding of other people and right relationship with them is Libra, your rising sign. So
Oh, wow.
in a certain sense, the way you just framed that, and you brought forth your Leo and Libra right there in the words you used. It was a great demonstration. Thank you.
William, I didn't even see that myself. That's,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I love, number one, I love the topics that you teach on. Recently, I saw another video. I think it was a YouTube short,
Uh,
and you had a way of describing the third eye
uh,
differently than I had heard about it before. And I don't know if you remember that video, if you can add a little bit to that, because honestly, um, it was I felt there's a lot of confusion around
yeah.
what is the third eye,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Am I suddenly going to turn on a new ability to see in other dimensions, or in what you shared? I felt was some wisdom that I don't know if you recall that, if you can touch on that at all.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact video you're talking about, but yeah, the third eye is it's there that the third eye is the soul's perceptual instrument in a certain sense.
Mm,
But what I like to tell people is that when you're on the path and you're awakening, you're beginning the process of opening the third eye. But the third eye is not completely open until after the transfiguration. Now, the transfiguration is a whole nother subject having to do with initiation. Initiation is a huge subject in this philosophy, and the transfiguration is the third initiation, which is to when the soul and the personality have finally completely fused. And there's
mm,
a whole other understanding of what happens when you finally become transfigured. Anyway, up until that point, for all of us at our level of development, short of the transfiguration, we have squinting third eyes, partially
okay.
open. But I always think that a squinting third eye is better than none at all. Okay.
Yeah.
And the third eye serves many, many functions. But one of the functions is to see the soul hidden in all things.
Hmm.
So, for instance, if I look at a tree, a beautiful tree outside. These two eyes, which are sometimes in esotericism called, these are called the eyes that look from here to there.
Hmm.
They're going to be attentive to the visual aspect of the tree, the leaves, the branches, the texture, the color, all of that. But the third eye is the part of you that senses deeper than the form of the tree to sense the soulful livingness trying to find expression through the tree. It's the sensing of the livingness that's rising up through the trunk, the branches, and the leaves. And
Mm.
it applies to other things as well, like when you look at the news. If you look at the news as it's presenting to us, they're presenting it to engage these two eyes.
Mm.
But the truth is, your third eye is the part of you that's looking deeper, sensing deeper than the appearance to sense what are the underlying energies that are trying to find expression through the visual thing I'm looking at. So it's the eye that sees the soul in all things. And that's only the partially open third eye. And
Mm.
that has a name that's called the eye of vision. Whereas when it's fully open, then it's another story altogether. That's called the eye of Shiva.
Okay.
And again, that doesn't occur until after the transfiguration. Um, yeah, and there's a sign of the zodiac that is archetypally most associated with the opening of the third eye. Do you have a sense of what it might be?
I don't know my zodiacs
It's
well
okay.
enough.
It's okay. It wasn't a quiz, I promise you.
Yeah.
Uh, it's actually the sign of Taurus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, well, have you ever heard the expression hitting the bull's eye? The
Yes.
bull's eye.
Yeah.
You see, we think that's an archery term, but it's actually much older than that. It's a reference to the bull in the sky. You see, look at the old drawings of the animals of the zodiac and look at the bull. He's always got one eye. So
Mm.
Taurus has a lot to do with a deeper way of looking. Now, having said that, it's true for all of us because even though you might not be Taurian,
Yep.
you have the planets that represent Taurus in your chart somewhere. So
Okay.
even though you're not a Taurian person, the planet that is carrying the node of Taurus, in this case it's Venus,
Yep.
is somewhere in your chart. And wherever it is in your chart, that's saying something about how to understand what might be trying to happen in the opening of your third eye. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say what you hit on there too about understanding the difference between, like you said, watching the news through our normal eyes,
Yeah.
through our our third eye would be more of a higher perspective,
Right.
a higher understanding.
Right.
It's would that be true of like you hear this word uh, the human condition or being conditioned, and we as we become more aware, we become aware of our conditioning and go through a more of a deconditioning process, like because there's so many things I think culturally, ancestrally, there's so
Yeah.
many things, traumas that sometimes we become conditioned by, but then at a certain point we start to become a little bit more self-aware and we see that as perhaps a way I've been conditioned as opposed does
Yeah.
that relate to that as well?
It would have a bearing on it, and it also has a bearing on the idea that when you're on the path, your personality is the part that's being conditioned by the environment,
Hmm.
not the soul. The soul is not being conditioned by the environment. The soul is conditioned by your incarnational history. And the sum, what is soul consciousness? It's the sum total of the wisdom that you have garnered over countless incarnations. And it's a place deep inside where you feel a quality of Christ-like love. That's actually pre-existing for you because you came from previous lives. So you might say that soul consciousness is top down, where personality is more bottom up.
Or bottom
And
up.
so,
Okay.
well, because we're trying to shift our polarized consciousness from our personality to our soul, yes, you're right. We have to recognize how are some of the conditionings of our personality life through our upbringing, etc. How are those getting in the way
Yep.
of, and indeed, there's a whole thing here called glamour or illusion. the veils of illusion. One of the workshops I'll be doing, not a workshop, it's one of the talks.
Yep.
Um, I'll be talking about what is one of them, as you will probably mention, is the dark night of the soul. And I'll be talking about understanding the dark night of the soul and how it has a relationship to what are called the veils of illusion, which are
Yep.
perceptual veils in the lower self that are getting in the way of either seeing or sensing the soul's intuitive guidance, or it's distorting that intuitive guidance. So much of the path has to do with lifting the veils of illusion, uh, and that is a big part of what it means to walk the spiritual path, eventually leading to enlightenment itself.
Nice. Well, yeah, because knowing where what is truth.
Mm, mm, mm.
When you've been all your life in a situation of or understanding of things that may not necessarily be true, you've been brought
Yeah,
up that way, but they may not necessarily be true.
yeah.
Will you be covering in any of these? I guess the question I have is when you talked earlier about, I think it was soul infusion or embodying more of the soul into the human essence.
Mhm.
What practices, maybe meditation, but what other like what things can one do on a daily basis, or we always seek like answers. How do we become more enlightened, whatever that question is?
Well, we in this philosophy, there is said to be the three
Mhm.
pillars, which are the most important. The first pillar to is service, to commit your heart to living life on behalf of the betterment of others, really. Um, Love, in a way, is still the answer in many ways. And so, heartfelt service to humanity is one of the three pillars. The second pillar is the pillar of cultivating your higher mind to study. And the reason that's important is because our lower mind, which is the personality mind, is the analytical mind, the part of your mind that was really well developed through our educational systems. It's designed to help you develop your lower mind. But your abstract mind, your higher mind, our educational systems don't do very well with that until you get up into university studies, and then it's trying to get you more into it. But a deeper cultivation of that higher division of mind is important. And why that's also important is because it's in that division of mind where the causal body is found. The causal body is the container, as I mentioned earlier. It's the container that's holding your soul's consciousness, and it's the causal body that is storing the acquired wisdom that you have earned over the course of many lifetimes. And it's the causal body that moves from, when we talk about reincarnation, another interesting subject. When we talk about reincarnation, what's reincarnating? It's the causal body that moves from one incarnation to the next, to the next. And a lot of the workshop I'll be focusing on, called The Solarized Mind, is all about a deeper understanding of the dynamics of the causal body and how to understand it playing out within you. That's so the two pillars. First is heartfelt service. Second is to study, to build your higher mind. And because the soul is in that higher mind region, the more you can think abstractly, the more you're in the neighborhood of the soul internally. The third pillar is meditation.
Okay.
Meditation. Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of those things help in what is called the building of the antakarana. Now, I don't know, Ron, if you're familiar with that term, antakarana. Now, it's a Sanskrit word,
Mhm.
and there's a whole science to it, but the antakarana is said to be the communication bridge deep inside that is linking the soul with the personality. But that antakarana, uh, well, the more it's built, the more the intuitions and the guidance of the soul become more rightly registered within the personality mind as a function of then carrying it forward. Um, that antakarana doesn't exist naturally.
Hmm.
In a natural sense, there's a big gap in consciousness. And there's a whole mythology of what led to that gap. I won't go down that road. But in many ways, we're slowly trying to build this antakarana. And when those three pillars are specifically designed to build the antakarana.
Okay.
And when it's fully built, that's also measured at the time of the transfiguration, the third initiation. For you and I, we have partially built antakaranas.
Okay.
And so the more that antakarana is built, the more the natural flow of the soul through the personality will be registered with less and less potential distortion. And
Okay.
so it has been said that the path is really, that the antakarana is the path. The path is first an inner journey to find that true alignment with the higher part of you, and then being in a receptive state to receive it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it has a lot to do with transforming the lower so that you're more able to build that antakarana and receive those impressions. So all spiritual efforts kind of must facilitate ultimately more of that antakarana being built. So there's a whole chapter in my book on the building of the antakarana. Um, and we will be certainly bringing it as a subject that I'll be presenting in Florida. Yeah,
Nice. Yeah. Nice. I'm going to be attending your classes, so I'll probably have more questions that I'll ask at that
sure,
point as
sure.
well. But yeah, what you just touched on there, those three pillars, heartfelt service to humanity, the the learning or the aspect of deepening your knowledge and wisdom, and
Yeah,
then the third one was meditation. And I can say that I've been somehow inspired to do more and more of that in my life, over more so even over the last few years. And I've noticed a lot of things such as synchronicity. I've noticed things such as just everything lining up. And I didn't notice that before earlier in my life, but I've
yeah.
definitely seen some things which I would say almost magic unfolding in a certain way that in
Mm.
more gratitude, just it's naturally there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I understand. Synchronicities are really important because it's one of the ways that the soul seeks to communicate. I
Mm,
often call it um, the process of um, what is the circumstantial message? How does circumstance conspire and shape patterns of circumstance? And it's one of the soul speaks to us in two directions. One is right through you,
mhm.
intuition, mind, build feeling, carry that thing into the world. But the other is the power of synchronicities and circumstantial messages. You know, Carl Jung, the great psychologist, he talked about the principle of synchronicities, and he called it meaningful coincidences. And I think that that's a good way of putting it. There is coincidence that's just random, but there are things that happen that are synchronistic that incredibly are meaningful to us. And more often than not, that's a higher part of yourself using circumstances as a way of helping you recognize something. So that's one of the ways the soul speaks to us through circumstance. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because that definitely relates to yeah what I was just saying.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah,
it's maybe I'll see a word on a passing sign at my eyes catch it and it's relative to a question that was coming up inside of me in
yeah,
various things like that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
meaningful coincidences. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, and I'll be covering some, when I do the workshop on the keys, which is really um, all about understanding more deeply the nature of soul purpose. And also, I'm going to provide in that whole seminar, I'm going to provide some keys to help you recognize your soul purpose, how to attitudes, methods, perspectives, techniques that can help you to more activate that soulful purpose within yourself. So that's part of the workshop.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. So that's the first one. And that's just to go through the workshops once again. The
sure.
January 18th is the keys unlocking the soul's purpose and destiny. And that's going to be in Fort Myers at the uh, Church of Spiritual Light. And then the next one is January 20th, Dark Night of the Soul. That's at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. I'm going to put
And
my
that's a talk. That's a talk. And
That's a
the
talk. Okay.
and the first one is a half a day workshop,
Oh yeah, I see it's from 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Okay.
So that's a half a day workshop. Then the talk is a 2 hour talk. I'm not sure which one you were. There's two of them. Which is it that you had mentioned?
Yeah, the first one was January 20th, Dark Night of the Soul, and
Yeah,
that's from 7 to 9, and that's at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light in
right,
Sarasota.
right.
And then you have one on the 21st, which is In the Name of Light, and
Yep,
that's at Wild Ginger, which is relatively close to where I am, also here in Sarasota,
right,
and that's from 7 to 9. And then the other one, the Solarized Mind, is the other workshop.
right. And
Okay.
that's a almost a day. I think that's from 10 to 5. That's a bit
Yep.
longer. And that has a lot to do with a deep understanding of soul itself, a real understanding of the causal body and what is called the solar angel. And that's based on the concept that your causal body, your soul nature, is being assisted by a great angelic entity, which is in this philosophy we often called a deva entity,
Okay.
and that deva has been with you as a supporting energy in your evolution for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of incarnations. So we're going to look at both the nature and the development of the causal body, your soul vehicle, and a deeper understanding of the angelic companion that is taking you in tow to help you evolve to eventual enlightenment again.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, William, to the listener out there, if they're attending, I guess number one, register now. Register. The information I saw was on your website, which
Yeah.
is meader.org, and then events. And then I saw under events, all four of these were listed, and they had the contact, I guess, the contact person. So I would suggest to anybody listening to this, go ahead and just register today. Make sure, because I'm sure some of these places may fill up.
Mm.
Should they bring anything? Should they bring pen and paper, or uh, what would you
People
suggest?
are funny about that. You know, a lot of people just take a ton of notes, and some people don't want to do that at all. They just want to take it in as I present it. There will be some handouts for the workshops. There'll be handouts. Um, so just bring yourself and bring the attitude of receptivity to learn some things that will hopefully really help each of us to deepen our understanding of the spiritual journey. And if you can walk away with just one or two things that really make a difference, well, I feel successful then
Nice.
if you do. So yeah, I hope you can join us. For those of you listening, I hope you can make it. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's well, you've got four opportunities, two workshops, two actual talks.
yeah,
And you mentioned before that you were offering some esoteric astrology sessions.
yeah. I've got a couple of days that are set aside for astrological readings, consultations, and those are handled through the Cosmic Center in Sarasota. And if you go to my website, you'll see under each of those, once you read a workshop, you'll see below it, it says astrological readings, and there's a link there that gives you further information about it, as well as who to contact to book a reading.
Okay,
Those are going to probably move pretty fast because it's just, I think I've got 8 or 9 appointments that are set aside for that trip. So those are probably going to go pretty quickly. So it's all on my website even now. Everything is on the website now. And so you can learn more about the workshops, the talks, and the readings by just going to Meader.org and then go under events and you'll find it. Okay.
Nice, beautiful. Well, I appreciate your time, William. Is there any last thing that you may want to add to the listener?
Okay. One last thing, and this is a kind of a whole nother big subject in this philosophy, but in esotericism, it's believed that humanity is going through a huge transition right now. It's both a astrological transition from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, those that we're familiar with. But a lot of people don't realize that it's also a rheological transition. We're moving from a great sixth ray age to a seventh ray age. And that's a movement from a mystical orientation to helping us become practical mystics. And that humanity is in what we call the period of the burning ground right now, where there's crisis. And all you have to do is watch the news to see it. And it is believed that humanity in this century may collectively take the first initiation, but always there's tests and trials ahead of it. And that's what we're dealing with now. We're in the period of the burning ground. And I only bring this up because I have a whole separate seminar on just that subject. But I'm
Hmm.
bringing it up here because I just want everybody to know that the wisdom that they each hold, each of us holds right now, and the higher love that you can sense right now, that your wisdom and your love is needed more now than at any time in your life, and that your wisdom it can contribute to humanity getting through this challenging period. So there is no better time to have a deeper understanding of your soul's nature, how to bring more of it into the world, and how to commit your life more fully to bringing that wisdom as a function of upliftment to others. This is your time. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of now in terms of what I'm going to be delivering in Florida.
Beautifully said. William, thank you so much for your time and looking forward to having you down here in Florida. And to the listener out there, please go ahead to Meader.org, go to events, and make sure that you register early enough so you have a seat in one of these events or all four of them. And yeah, I really appreciate your time today, William.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Ron, and I'll see you soon in Florida.
Definitely. See you soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye for now. Bye for now.